Yo! What's happening, everybody? I think I'm right on the button. Yeah, 7 o'clock. Perfect. How's it going? Your friendly neighbourhood Dre here, back at it again with another, in this case, Hangout with you guys. I did promise I'd try and do one of these a month. And, yeah, here we are, I suppose. Just gonna quickly do the old social media plug-in. Let me know if everything sounds alright and looks alright. Just gotta tweet this out. And live. Hi Jason, good to see you, buddy. Libby! Hey! Happy birthday, sweetheart. Mwah. Hope you're having a lovely birthday, Libby. Thank you for deciding to share some of it with me. That's very generous of you. But I hope you're having a good one. Sounds good. Excellent. That's a good sign. Not just Eddie. Joe, good to see you, buddy. How's it going? Let me know how you're holding up. God, I can't pronounce that name. I think is that Russian lettering? I can't say for sure. I don't know how you pronounce that. Raw? Evening? Good evening to you, my friend. Help me out with the pronunciation, because I don't want to butcher that for the next couple of hours or however long this goes for. Like I said, give me a minute. I'll be properly going in just a second. Just got to do some tweeting. Second podcast Twitter. Hey. Right. The Twitters are going. Instagram knows. Alright. Double digits, oh yeah, that's a good sign. Early prediction for the stream. Dre will end up ranting on the super license system. You know, look, there's not an awful lot about it that's changed since the last Hangout, because I was already writing back at like mid-season. Oh, it's Janosch, that's how you pronounce it. Thanks, buddy. Look, I said on the website as far back as like the summer break, I felt like there was a good chance that there'd be no graduates coming through at all next year. And it looks like Juan Yuzhou is going to be the one guy coming up, and probably not the guy that everybody wanted it to be in Oscar Piastri. But this story happens every year. It happens every year where someone really good misses out because there's too much young talent and there's not enough seats to go around. So it's gonna be inevitable that people are gonna miss out. It's just the way it goes sometimes, unfortunately. And I don't really feel like repeating myself year on year that, you know, your favourites that you watch in Formula 2 are not all going to make it, unfortunately. In fact, it's more the opposite these days. There's a better chance of you not making it, even if you're a top 5 guy, than you are if you're not making it, especially with the sport getting younger and younger. So yeah, JB, good to see you, buddy. Libby said Franks had to go to Alfred's for an indicator bulb after work, so fun birthday trip. Yeah, I had to go to Halford's a couple of days ago to get a bicycle pump. Whatchamacallit? For my electric scooter. So yeah, you know that feeling certainly. Good to see you, Dom. Thai Pizza Lords is in the chat. I'll get to you in just a second, buddy. Hope you're doing all right. Marlene, hello Marlene. Hope you're doing okay. Good to see you. Nice to see some familiar faces. Joe saying not bad, been busy, but hopefully won't be over Crimbo. Yeah, I'm a little bit lucky. Actually, like bookies tend to be pretty damn quiet around Christmas time. There's not an awful lot of horse racing. Thankfully, where I work, so I think this is the first year that horse racing is going to shut down on like the 22nd in the UK, so that the jockeys actually and the staff will get to spend more time with their families this year. So it actually means it should be less busy for us, apart from the Christmas football, which we're not really a big football shop anyway, so I don't think it'll be a big deal. At least I hope not anyway. So I hope hope Christmas is nice and chill for you as well. We get a couple of early closes in there as well, which is quite nice. You don't have to stick around till 10 PM, which is always nice. There's a couple of days I think we close at 6, which is cool. Who else we got here? Hello Scott, good to see you. Hope you're having a nice evening. Sam Sutcliffe, I've seen you on Instagram. I'm doing well, my friend. Still a bit bunged up. I don't quite sound my usual self. I'm not quite 100% yet. I'm still recovering from a nasty case of man flu. Whenever the Rossi retrospective podcast special we end up doing and episode 334 on Saudi Arabia comes out, you can tell I'm just a bit stuffy. It's not quite so bad. Thankfully, it's not COVID. I did do a lateral flow, and that did turn out negative. Thankfully, so thankfully it's not COVID, but just generally nasty case of man flu. But thankfully nothing serious. But yeah, I'm all right. Besides that, just a little bit, blech, a little bit withdrawn, but. I'm just enjoying my week off work, so that's nice and all that. Let's quickly check over the chat. Yeah, type is all saying Zoe's good enough to get a shot. Absolutely. Like, just because he was not the number one option on the board, in my opinion, doesn't mean that Zhou's not good enough to be in F1. I think he's more than good enough to be in F1. I think the people that are saying that he isn't are probably the sort of people that think that Formula 1 should absolutely, positively, without compromise, have the 20 best young drivers in the world in it. And that's never been the case. Ever. So, it's a futile goal to say, yeah, we want the 20 best racing drivers in the world in the pinnacle of motorsport, because, you're not going to get that scenario, first and foremost. And second of all, I mentioned it earlier, the sport is heaping with younger talent. I did some checking on this and writing about it earlier in the year. The median age of the grid going into the start of this season was 25. Which for Formula 1 is really goddamn young. And it's only going to get younger because Kimi Räikkönen is retiring this weekend. Antonio Giovinazzi's above the median line at 27, and he is probably done with F1 after this weekend. It's crazy. So, unless you're spectacular, you're not going to move the needle in Formula 2 anymore, and Guan Yu Zhou comes with tremendous marketing potential. We put it out there on the podcast's Twitter page where we put a clip up talking about this and how if you're an F1 team, there's a reason why Zhou was in Ferrari's and Alpine's driver academy, and it's because he is the first F1 level prospect in recent times from China. And an opportunity to sign an F1 driver from China is a huge marketer's wet dream. So why wouldn't you take that opportunity on, even if it meant compromising slightly on talent? Of course, everybody knows that Piastri's better than Zhou. I'm not disputing that for a second. Piastri is an A-plus prospect. He's on the level of Norris, Russell, Gasly, Leclerc, all of those guys that come up in the last 2 or 3 years. I think Piastri's on that level, but unfortunately, sometimes you shit out of luck on the junior ladder. Like, you could have all the talent in the world, but it still might not necessarily get you over the line. Unfortunately. Yeah, Libby, I think you're spot on in the chat. More teams would be ideal, but the problem is, and I'm sure Libby will vouch for this, is that starting a new F1 team from scratch is ludicrously expensive. Like, we're talking hundreds of millions of pounds in capital and startup costs to build an F1 team up from scratch. So, it's far, far cheaper for an investor to buy out an existing team. Look, there was a lot of talk as recently as like September that pardon me, a bit of gas there. Andretti was going to buy out Sauber, and apparently it was control issues rather than financial issues that stalled that deal. And Sauber are allegedly asking for $400 million for the team. So, not a lot of investors in this economy, in this market, have suddenly got $400 million in the bank, ready to go, just to buy out the team. Let alone taking on all the contracts, taking on all the assets, any debt that might have to be taken off the books. You know, then of course the running logistics of trying to run a profitable team. Which, when you're someone like Sauber, who is probably going to finish 9th in the Constructors this year, like, that makes the job even harder. So, you know, we got to hold out hope that Porsche maybe wants to come in after 2026 for the next set of regulations. A lot of that will also boil down to who wins the FIA presidency. We'll find out during the awards gala next week. Benjamin Sulaim has got a decent chance of apparently winning it. So we'll have to wait and see, because he's going to be in charge for the next set of engine wrecks. So how he shapes the sport could decide, you know, how we go on from here. We've got a whole bunch of questions now. Joe McMillan saying, how much is it to enter? Depends on your team. Depends on how many resources and assets you want to throw at it. The last time I saw that Audi was interested in Formula 1, I think, was around 2015. And 2015, from what I remember, Audi did a study into how much they reckoned it would cost to start an F1 team from scratch. I'm sure the figure came out at something like 1.2 billion. And if you're spending that kind of money, you're pretty much accepting at the gate that you're not making any sort of return on your investment unless you win the championship, and you could sell enough road cars off the back of it in marketing value. It's what Merckx did. When Merckx won the title in 2014 as a hybrid, their first title since coming back, I believe it was they were 80 million in the red on the balance sheets, but they valued the marketing value of winning the title at 2 billion quid. And when it comes to road car marketing and selling road cars and having Hamilton and Rosberg in their team. So, you know, if you've got road cars to sell, great. But if you haven't, there's even less incentive. Yeah, Joe, it was right around the time that I think Red Bull were thinking about setting up in 2015 because they didn't like where the hybrid regulations were going. I think a lot of it was just grandstanding because Red Bull loved to do that. But, yeah, I wouldn't go too far into that way of thinking. Most likely, if we get someone new, it will be somebody buying out the artists formerly known as Sauber, is the most likely scenario, because we all know Haas is eventually going to get bought out by Dimitri Mazepin. You know, I don't think Williams and the Darlington group bought the team to flip it. To be fair, a lot of companies do that sort of thing. Like with certain companies, like the UFC was bought, stripped, and then sold on. but I don't think that will happen with Williams, and I don't think anybody else has got a realistic chance of being bought out anytime soon. At least I don't think so anyway. I'd be surprised. Besides, I mean, McLaren. And McLaren have already sold a third of their team off to, what was it, the guys that own Liverpool, I think it is? So, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Oh. Let's have a look here. Evan. Oh, hi, Evan. Good to see you. I said, okay, question regarding Verstappen v Hamilton. Who wins if it's just a straight-up fight? I think it's Hamilton. I really do. I just think Mercs have got a stronger package right now. In race trim, they are just so hard to beat, and that engine that they've got is so overpowered now. And they could easily... Apparently they're going to go back to their other engine again, and that's going to be another 30 horsepower. So, like, having 5 engines in Hamilton's pool over Verstappen's 4 is a huge advantage, because let's not forget, Red Bull lost one when Bottas took Verstappen out at Hungary. So, you know, it's one of those things. How big of a shitstorm would happen if Max wins and does a CM Punk and leaves off on with the title? Don't be silly. Trade for Prez. Oh, Libby, you're the best. You spoil me. Lot of ex-Audi popping up at Williams lately. Interesting. Tyre Pizza Lord. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. What do you make of the whole Mercedes Kingspan Grenville saga? Long story short, Mercedes really should have fucking known better. We talk about it on the podcast when that comes out, hopefully this weekend. You know, we'll have to wait and see when King gets around to editing it. His weekends are a bit busy now working at Jalopnik. But, yeah, like... Long story short, it really pissed me off for many, many reasons, and the biggest one being is that the whole thing was a huge fucking distraction from the real issue, and that 72 families in London are still looking for justice regarding what happened with that tower, and next thing you know, it's become a story about, you know, Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton and... almost being guilty via association, like he's in control of what sponsor deals his team makes. Like, the person that people should be angry at is Toto Wolff. Toto talks a very good game. He's a very, very good politician, is what I will say. He should have known better. And to be fair, I think that's still probably giving him too much credit. I think it's more a case of he knew what he was doing, and I think he was hoping there wasn't going to be a massive backlash, as if people on the internet don't do their homework or something. Like, you cannot sit there and claim to be this altruistic Formula One team. And don't get me wrong, Mercedes have done a lot of good work off the track. The Accelerate 25 program, the school partnerships, they are genuinely trying to make the sport a more diverse, acceptable sport. They are the only ones that ever released the makeup of their team, and the fact it was 97% white and 88% male. So I applaud Mercedes for that, because nobody else has made anywhere near that same amount of effort regarding diversity and regarding trying to, you know, trying to go beyond the calls of their sport to make it a more diverse place. But then you spit on all of that when you take up a brand deal with a company that was indirectly responsible for the deaths of 72 people. One, you know, a cause that Hamilton himself had publicly backed and supported. He publicly has got on the record supporting Grenfell and the families that are still grieving in Grenfell United as they try to seek justice 4.5 years on from that fire, because like the inquiry into what happened, is still going as we speak. So for Toto to sign that deal and then come up with a piss poor explanation letter as to why they took their deal a day later, when understandably fans were absolutely pissed about it. They didn't even do it in the off-season. To be fair, as Jason points out, they didn't even do it in the off-season. Like, I don't think it would have made any difference, because people on the internet are loud and proud, and people would have pointed that out anyway. But to do it live, where there's more eyes on you than there's probably been in any time in F1 in the last 10 years, doubly stupid. And I get why the internet went out of its way to defend Lewis Hamilton, because he was unfairly sucked into the story. He was clickbaited, his name was used. You know what media companies are like. They're going to use his name in these matters. So like, I get why people defend Hamilton, because it happens a lot on social media. He is some of it fairly, some of it unfairly. He takes a lot of shit on social media, but it shouldn't have even been about that for me. It should have been about these families still need support, not about whether Mercedes should or shouldn't have a terrible sponsor on the side of their car, as far as I'm concerned. But don't worry, Lewis' house isn't on fire. That's just a nice looking fireplace video on loop, because I thought it would look nice on the TV. But it is what it is in that sense. But Merckx should have known better. Libby saying lots of people lower down and Toto fucked up there too. Never should have been put in front of him. Agreed. You're absolutely right where that's concerned, but Toto makes the final call, and he owns a third of the team, so ultimately the buck stops with him. So it's a shame it took that much social media backlash from a lot of fair-minded people for them to cancel the deal. It just felt like we're trying to get away with a fast one here, rather than we actually give a shit about social issues. And it kind of dulls everything else they've done, where they're still willing to take a paycheck from an objectively awful company if it means topping up the bank balances of their account. So that's enough of that. Checking the lineups. So what does Aston do when Seb eventually leaves F1? Hire the best driver available. You're right, I don't think they've actually got a lot of academy connections, but if a seat becomes available, I'm sure they could talk somebody decent into leaving one of them. That's how this goes these days. A lot of these guys have academies just to poach other talent away from them. As Libby quite rightly points out in the chat. At least Kingspan don't make the overalls for the drivers. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, I shouldn't have laughed, but you're not wrong. Da-da-da-da. I don't know if it's best to ask you or King, says Black Inferno 99, but in terms of popularity, is F1 now where NASCAR was in the 90s? And seeing how much NASCAR has declined, does this worry you? Question inspired by the influx of casual fans as a result of Netflix. Well, I've spoken to King about this on the podcast, off the podcast. People need to calm down on, Formula One's now massive in the United States. I think the reason why the US was so big for F1 this year was because they haven't had a race in 2 years. Due to the pandemic, let's not forget that the 2020 season was basically incredibly Europe and Middle Eastern based. They didn't bother going to North America because they were rife with COVID cases. So this was the first United States race in 2 years, basically. So I think that is what generated a big influx of people, because it was the first time they had the chance to go to an F1 race in 2 years. It has absolutely grown in the US. I have no doubt in my mind that Drive to Survive is a small factor in this, but they are not anywhere near NASCAR is in the United States. Like, that race on TV did about the same ratings-wise as what the NASCAR Xfinity Series race did. On a Saturday. Like, talk to me when Formula One races in the US get 3 or 4 million viewers a race, rather than 650, 750,000. Like, that's when I would start raising an eyebrow and saying, oh, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Because that's what the NBA is pulling for an average regular season game. That's what baseball is pulling in. That's what the other big American sports are pulling in. You know, F1 is not anywhere near that level yet. It's still a niche of a niche in the United States. It's got a lot of work to do in that regard. It's going to take a lot more than just a flash-in-the-pan reality TV show to suddenly make people roll up in their millions to watch these races, rather than just a few hundred thousand more. It's definitely on the up, do not get me wrong, but it is not to the point where F1's going to suddenly make it a big five in the US, or people are going to be going crazy about how, oh, you know, F1's big in America now. People need to calm down on that front, at least. But it's a step in the right direction, certainly. Andrew Bannister asking, Drake, who would you rather win, Max or Lewis? Is it safe for me to say this? Look, you know me, I'm a Sebastian Vettel fan. I don't have a dog in this fight, really. But I would rather see Lewis win. I'm not a fan. I'm a bigger fan of Lewis Hamilton, the person, than I am of Max Verstappen, the person. I'm not going to lose any sleep over this if Verstappen wins the title this weekend. I really am not. Do I think Verstappen's a great human being? Fuck no. Like, am I ever going to root for him? Hell no. Do I think he gets an unfair rap on the internet? Hell yeah. You know? So, like, I don't think Verstappen as a driver is rated fairly on the internet whatsoever. But that doesn't mean I'm rooting for him to win this championship. Purely from a competitive standpoint, I would find it way more interesting to me if Verstappen won this title than Lewis won number 8. Personally, look, I've said it before on streams because I know it's safe. I find Lewis Hamilton, the human being, way more interesting than Lewis Hamilton, the racing driver. Quite honestly. So, look, I'm not going to lose any sleep either if Hamilton wins this title. But I'm not exactly going to jump up and down off my couch if Hamilton wins an 8th world title and his 7th in 8 years. Like, as a sports fan, I'm not going to jump up and down with excitement over that. I'm just not. I was speaking about this with John T yesterday because I know the season finale in the UK is going to be on free-to-air television. Channel 4's picked up a deal to show Sky's footage for this race. To which my response is always the same of, like, somebody said to me, oh, Dre, it's going to get like 10 million viewers. To which I said, it probably won't. Emma Raducanu got 9.5 for the US Open earlier this year, and that was in a terrible time slot on a Saturday night. You know, it was 11 PM when she won that title. A Sunday at 3 PM UK time, with the Premier League going on at the same time. I really don't think this is going to be the great big Brazil 2008 needle mover that they think this is going to have. But, you know, I don't... Long story short, I don't really care who wins. Like, may the best man win is what I say. Quite frankly, I've got pros and cons on either side. But it is what it is. My old partner in crime, Scott Woodwiss. Long time no talk, my friend. I hope you're doing alright out there. Evening, bud. Do you think Alonso's podium in Qatar helps towards quashing anyone's argument that drivers like him are too old for F1 and that age isn't becoming a major factor with drivers anymore? I think you're onto something there. Look, age is nothing but a number as far as I'm concerned. I think Fernando Alonso is still a very, very good racing driver, even at age 40. I think it surprises me we don't have more drivers competing at his sort of age bracket. We've only really got 3. Like Alonso, Kimi, who's retiring this weekend anyway, and Lewis is 37 in January. Like, given what we now know about things like nutrition and fitness, and that we have better technology for keeping our bodies better and fitter than we did 20, 30 years ago when it was Schumacher and Senna and those sorts of guys, I am actually not that surprised that Alonso could still drive at the highest level at age 40. It really doesn't surprise me at all. So yeah, by all means, I've always said there is always going to be an inherent value to, going younger. And the sport has gone younger for good reason, because I've said it before, everybody wants their own Lewis Hamilton. They don't want the next Kimi Raikkonen. They want the next Lando Norris or George Russell. They want to tie down a guy they can make their driver for the next 15 years. That's what they're looking at. You see it in Grand Prix motorcycle racing all the time. Like, Petronas took a punt on Fabio Quartararo. He had one Grand Prix win until he debuted in the top flight of MotoGP, and now he's I think the 3rd youngest world champion of all time. And he's now with Yamaha and has been with his whole career, and they're going to try and tie him down for 2 more years after this. Like, that's the sort of guy they're looking for. They're not looking for a Johan Zarco. They're looking for a young guy they could invest years of potential production out of. That's what Red Bull did when they got into F1, and it worked with Sebastian Vettel, it's worked with Max Verstappen, and it'll work when somebody else falls into their laps. So I get why the sport's gone younger, but it doesn't mean that Fernando Alonso still can't drive at age 40, And I think there is a chance in 10, 15 years' time we'll be seeing a lot more dudes drive into their 40s. It would not surprise me at all. 40 now is not what 40 was 20 years ago, if you get my drift. God, we've got 37 of you in here right now. Holy shit, this is popular. Guys, if you haven't already, leave a like and all that. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. We've got plenty of podcasts coming and all of that. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in. Jesus Christ, I was surprised at that. Didn't think that many would hop in on a Thursday night like this, but I'm very grateful, so thank you. But I do think you're right as well, Scott, that a lot of it is drawing in younger fans. When people talk about sports and demographics and fans they want to bring in, the 1834 demographic comes up all the goddamn time now. And that's across the board in sports. Like everybody will talk about the demographics. Where was it with 18 to 34-year-olds? Wrestling is obsessed with that. MMA is obsessed with that. Baseball has been trying in America so hard to try and bring in younger fans, because the average age of a baseball fan in the US is 52. 52. Apparently in F1 it's now 32, which shocked me that that's even a thing. So, That's why people are obsessed with youth, because people find it more relatable. People think Lando Norris is relatable when he's the son of a multi-millionaire. I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I hope that helps. Driver intros at Cotonou are amazing. Agreed, Evan. F1's going to need an American driver winning races and titles. Not even that, I don't think, would do it, JB. I think you need more just an American being good. Like, you need someone to go out of your way to be transcendent in America. And I'm not sure how they're going to do that when F1's already got their transcendent guy, and that's Lewis Hamilton. You know, so at least for another 2 years. So we'll have to wait and see. I was all for Max winning until Jeddah, and now I'd rather Lewis win. Fair enough, man. Look, I am not gonna beat around the bush and pretend like what Max did or didn't do in Jeddah wasn't right on the line of dirty, but makes for great television. Look, there's your reasons for your guy winning is ultimately down to you. It's incredibly subjective. I've already seen counter arguments like, you know, I'd rather just not see Lewis win again, which is completely understandable. Sports fans don't like dominance. Said it countless times. Like, I've seen it in, like, I'm a Manchester United fan. I cannot sit there with a clear conscience and sit there and say, oh my god, United are losing. How bad is this? You know, like, I watched the Premier League team win 13 out of 20 Premier League titles. Everybody hated United, and understandably why, because they had the best manager in the world, all the resources they could possibly hope for, and they won a fuck ton of football games. I get it. 110%. Checking the chat. I'm rooting for Max purely because Lewis has won so many in the last years. I just thought I want something else. Yeah, completely get it. They could both win, but then next season I want an Albon Norris Tsunoda title fight. Love your optimism, Marlene. Libby, it's real fun to watch this year with no skin in the game. Max v LH is nuts. Do not get me started on those two fan bases. Good lord. How likely is it that the championship will be decided on the court? Pretty likely, Daniel, to be honest with you. I think there is too much to lose for either party for them to go across that line. At this point, they both are going to want to keep their cars intact. Like, the internet and the media are now 100% adamant that Verstappen is going to take Hamilton out of the first corner, like Ayrton Senna did. And I'm just like, why are people jumping to this conclusion? Like, oh, because the scoreboard says Verstappen will win on countback if he does. And I'm like, yeah, and the stewards have already warned them that if that happens, they'll take points away. The stewards could take points away from the championship at their discretion. They've warned them about this, so Verstappen will not try it, and even Verstappen's own bosses have said he's not going to try something like that. So, you know, I think a lot of people want it to be that way because they want Verstappen to be the bad guy in all of this. It's like Verstappen's the heel, so he's going to do something dirty. It's like it's classic pro wrestling narratives that are coming into play here, and I don't entirely think that's fair. But, hey, what do I know? Fernando's face makes an excellent tattoo. Libby, you would know, you've got about 20 of them. Like, jeez. You've got shit that I haven't even seen. Like, it's crazy. So, you would say that. On the age thing, there was a great video BTCC did about drivers obtaining sponsorship, and Jason Plato made a great point to counter those who said he and others should make way for younger drivers. His point was it's not his fault that the younger drivers can't pull sponsors and build a financial package compared to himself and others of the experience and brand power. Yeah, makes perfect sense, Scott. Really does. Look, Jason Plato's been racing touring cars for what, 30 years now? Like, of course, like, not to mention he's got crossover appeal because he hosted Fifth Gear. I think he still does host Fifth Gear now. So he's a legitimate TV star. He's a known, recognisable face. Of course he's going to get better sponsors than some random 20-year-old upstart that came through Genettas or whatever. You know, no shit. Totally makes sense. What do you make of McLaren's problems and Ferrari overtaking them? I just think Ferrari's been really good, Ty, to be honest with you. Like, Ferrari have just got I think they've got a better team. Like, Lando Norris is a driver of the year contender, but Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz have been very, very good for Ferrari all year long. And I think they've just mitigated mistakes. They finished work on their car a long time ago. I think they've just nailed setups. They've just got a better all-round package. I really do. Hi, Johnsy. Hope you're doing alright. Let's have a look here. God, I've run out of drink already. That's not a good sign. I'm like 40 minutes in. Let's have a look here in the chat. You know it's over the limit when Charles Leclerc said it's over the limit. Look, Charles Leclerc has a bad reputation. I don't think that Leclerc is anywhere near as bad as, again, people like to think he is when it comes to, like, off-track excursions or, you know, just generally being, you know, don't think it's a fair fight on that one either for let's have a look here. Trust the process. Trust Das project with Aston Martin. Scott, again, I love your optimism. I still don't understand why Lewis slowed down when he was right behind Max. It could have been insanely dangerous if Ocon was closer. Because Lewis thought that Verstappen was intentionally slowing down so he could counter-attack with DRS straight away. That had to be what was going through Lewis's mind, because he admitted he didn't want something like Spa 2008 to happen, where he tried giving up a place and repassing a car immediately, and he got hit with a 25-second time penalty for it. I think Lewis was wary of the gamesmanship that came with that. I think the only reason why Lewis didn't get in any further trouble regarding that incident was because if it wasn't for the mitigation in the steward's report, you could just say Hamilton was going for a normal overtake. But both of them were in the wrong as far as I'm concerned. Like, Verstappen, like, a lot of people wanted to make out like that was an intentional brake check or a brake test. I completely disagree with that notion. And I think anyone that... If you did not read the steward's report regarding that incident, then if you read it, I don't know how you could possibly come to that conclusion. Like, there is more than enough mitigation in that report to suggest this was not intentional. Like, I think the wording of the steward's report was actually spot on when they described Verstappen's actions as erratic. It was erratic. It was silly. You could make an argument. I don't think a small amount of brake pressure was him trying to wreck Lewis Hamilton's car, because implying you're intentionally brake testing someone implies that you're trying to wreck their car. You're trying to make sure the other guy doesn't finish and you're prepared to use your car as a weapon to do it. Like, I don't think people acknowledge how serious an accusation that is. Like, because people don't like it amongst those two fan bases when you imply that somebody did something on purpose. Look at Silverstone. How much did Hamilton fans jump off their couch when Christian Horner implied that Hamilton was dirty? They accused him of being a racist. Like, he said, Hamilton's a dirty driver. He knows what he's doing when it comes to that corner. And everyone was like, that's a microaggression. And I'm not necessarily saying that they're wrong for saying that, but the implication of intent pissed off a lot of people. And I think a lot of people will never look at Horner in the same way again after that, especially fans of colour. And then again, like Toto Wolff implied that Verstappen did a tactical foul when he had that crash at Monza. When I think the sausage curb played a huge role in how that accident played out. Like, I think Verstappen just normally cuts to chicane if it's not for the giant sausage curb alongside the side of turn 1. Why we still have sausage curbs in Formula 1 is mind-boggling to me. But, like, both sides of the fan spectrum here don't like it when one accuses the other of intent or intentional or being deliberate or on purpose. You know, so... But of course, the moment Verstappen goes over the line, we're going to say, oh yeah, he absolutely did it on purpose, even though even the steward's report kind of suggests that it wasn't. But, you know, you can't talk about that on Twitter, because if you do, somebody will shit on you from a great height. But, you know. Daniel, did you see that open letter from Moto? I did see the open letter. It was one of Autosport cringe. Like, this is why certain people think there's a British bias. When you're writing open letters, Wreck Lewis going into turn 1 because we saw 1997 and we all shit ourselves. Like, you know, it's not a fair fight, but it's the sort of post where if you write for Autosport you could get away with it because, hey, they're the British guys. Let's have a look. It's the pro-British narrative again. Remember when Rosberg paid off Bottas in 2014 to hit Hamilton at Abu Dhabi? I see what you did there. Ooh. There's a couple of the drop frames there. I think we're okay. Yeah. Hope the connection's still alright, but apparently we've dropped a few frames here and there. Hopefully it's not too bad, connection-wise. My internet's not great, I'm not going to lie to you. Just checking my Streamlabs right here. Yeah, it's a bit of a red bar. It's a bit annoying. Take care, Jason. See, it's things like what Max did in Jeddah that makes me think that Lewis has the edge and has a better chance of coming out on top. Lewis just handles the pressure of the situation better than Max. Plus, Lewis has been here before, whereas this is Max's first dance for the title. Max is more prone to do something out of desperation than Lewis is. Max will get there with maturity. Yeah, I totally get that. I don't think that's a crazy suggestion at all. We don't know. If there's one season, like if this season has proven anything, it's that Verstappen can absolutely compete at World Championship level. Like it's like I don't think people have realised just how good Verstappen has been this season. Like, 9 wins. If he finishes second on Sunday, he's going to have 387 points in a season and not win the title with 9 wins and 17 podium finishes. 18 if you include the one he would probably get on Abu Dhabi to lose the title. That is insane by any measure. It is an insane season. It's as good as anything in this hybrid era. Like, the 4 races this year he's not finished first or second all have mitigating circumstances. Baku, tyre failure. You know, he was 9th in Hungary where he was taken out by Valtteri Bottas indirectly. You know, Monza, I'd argue that was a racing incident. But, you know, depends on how you judge it at home. Right? Like, Silverstone, he was taken out by Hamilton. So, if it's actually... There we go. Sorry about that. I think my connection's gotten a bit shaky there on that front. But I think we're alright now. But, no, I was going to say, like, Max has been incredible this year. Hamilton's been incredible this year. Those two are on a completely different plane of existence compared to the rest of the field. You know, so I just don't think people have clocked just how brilliant Verstappen has been. And I think, as Katori points out in the chat, I think it's just far too like he was always going to be the villain in this story, because again, this is shit that I would never be able to say on Twitter because people get far too defensive about this. You're not beating Lewis Hamilton in a popularity contest. Never. Hamilton is transcendent. Hamilton has got fans who don't even watch F1 who are on his side. That anything that is even the slightest hint not pro-Lewis, you'll get piled on Twitter. I remember Jenny Gow earlier this season got a 150 plus quote retweet pylon on Twitter because she mentioned Sebastian Vettel in the same tweet as the same tweet as Lewis Hamilton regarding their activism work. So, like, that's the sort of climate that we're now on with these two. And Lewis is never going to lose a popularity contest on Twitter. He has too many hardcore fans that believe in him, and there are too many people that will give him the benefit of the doubt. You know, that's just how it goes. There, you know, it's... You know, it's how it's going to be. So it's almost inevitable that Verstappen will end up the villain in this feud. And that was before Jeddah. Jeddah was like the last straw for a lot of people. But I've always said, if the stewards are going to be inconsistent in how they evaluate these incidents, I can't blame Max Verstappen for engaging in the dark arts and letting the stewards make a call. That's gamesmanship. That's what people do to win. Like, I'm a Schumacher fan. I cannot sit here with a clear conscience and tell you that I had to turn the other cheek as Schumacher did this same sort of bullshit twice. 3 times, arguably. You know, 94 with Hill, 97 with Villeneuve, when he parked his Ferrari at Raskas in 2006, when he almost ran Barrichello into the Hungarian pit wall in 2010. Like, that's Michael. Do you think people shit on Michael's legacy? Even before his accident? Of course they don't. Because deep down, we know it's a part of the sport. We know it's a part of the gamesmanship that comes with this sport. Ayrton Senna was prepared to die at Suzuka and was prepared to take Alain Prost with him in 1990 to win that championship. Do you think people shit on Senna now? Even before he died? People were harsh to him in the media, but Senna's the most universally beloved racing driver of all time. Like, it's not the legacy wrecker that people think it's going to be. Whew. You know, so I don't think it's fair. Some of the shit that Verstappen gets. Some of it is, some of it isn't. But on Twitter, there is no room for nuance. On the internet, there is no room for discourse. You've got to marginalise it down to 280 characters, and a lot of the time the people that are commenting are biased one way or the other. They've probably already made their decision on what their opinion is going to be on the matter before they've even started typing. So that's just how it's going to be, I'm afraid. And it probably will be like this again for a while. It's just a bit more heated because the Verstappen lot are just even more toxic than Sebastian Vettel was when he was in Hamilton's way in 2017 and 18. Trust me, I would know. I was in the middle of that dog shit. And that involved one guy intentionally hitting another one on purpose. That happened. And the reaction wasn't as harsh as this. It's crazy. Zoa. Max took himself out at Silverstone, turned in on Lewis. Disagree. I'll keep it brief, but I disagree. Hamilton was never in front, and I don't think he was ever going to make that corner with his car pinned so close to the inside line of cops. If you're going to pin the blame on somebody, it is always going to be Hamilton in that sort of scenario, because Hamilton took a lunge he was probably never going to make. Verstappen ultimately took the race in line for the corner. So no, I do not believe Verstappen took himself out. I think Hamilton stuck his nose in where it wasn't needed. I think his 10-second time penalty was deserved, and I think he was extremely lucky that the red flag that he was responsible for bringing out, for putting Verstappen in the wall, gave him a chance to fix his broken car, because it probably would have been retired if it wasn't for the red flag. Hamilton skated on very thin ice this year on a couple of occasions. Let's put it to you that way. Maybe block button is there for a reason, makes life so much easier. Yeah, look. If anyone's followed me on Twitter for a long time, you've probably noticed I don't engage anywhere near as much as I used to. If you followed me 4 or 5 years ago, I was far more vocal on Formula 1 and MotoGP and other series in motorsport. Like, for some people, having hot takes is literally their entire social media presence. And I can't get there with that. I just don't find that, like, I don't want to be defined by hot takes, personally. I've tried saving my best stuff now for social media in general. So, you know, I just try to be as nuanced as I can, and I try to be a bit more diplomatic and try, to think before I type a bit more these days, because, like, I know how to skirt that line between the two audiences quite well. And honestly, like, I'm not good. Like, I've muted and blocked a lot of people on both sides of the parapet when it comes to this title fight. Some of the nastiest people on this platform do so in the name of their favourite racing driver. That's just how it goes. So it is what it is. We're dealing with a site that has no repercussions anymore. In terms of, like, because the worst that'll happen to you is you'll be kicked off the platform and just be told to start a new account. That's the punishment. You can't IP ban people on Twitter because Twitter doesn't use static IPs. So this is how it's going to have to be. So, that's just how it is. It's not fair. Ask FM says hi. Oh, don't remind me. Don't remind me, Joe. Those days were the worst. It's amazing how brave some people are when they don't have to put their name on something. Let's put it to you that way. Because, trust me, there is a bunch of stuff on my old page, Ask FM-wise, that now would be deemed in this country as a hate crime. trust me, it was rough. So this whole Hamilton versus Verstappen shit, it's not my first pony show. I was there for Hamilton v Vettel in 2017. I was there as far back as 2013 when I was being called a monkey for defending Sebastian Vettel after Multi-21. Or being there when Vettel and Rosberg were being called Nazis because they are German and have blonde hair, which is just the stupidest shit imaginable. So, this is what... It's always been like this. It's just a lot more front and centre because there are more people using the platform. There's just more people using the platform than it was 5 or 6 years ago. Let's have a look here. I'm starting to get the impression that you blocked me on Twitter. I never wrote anything offensive or exciting at all, but you've never reacted to me ever, I think. What's your account on Twitter, Marlene? I'll find out for myself. Libby, yeah, you did actually the cricket tweeter. It's safer being a cricket tweeter, Libby. And to be fair, they've gone through some shit themselves. It's not... Nowhere is safe. Trust me. Can we band-aid the toxicity by seeing how Sebastian can legally adopt Mick as a son? That's what I want in life. No. Let Mick be his own man. Yeah, Imola as well. You guys mentioned that as well. How is F1 stewarding so inconsistent compared to IndyCar? Look, Daniel, IndyCars isn't wonderful either. They've just had less howlers, in my humble opinion. The reason why F1's is bad is because, one, we expect our officials to be perfect, and that's never going to happen when humans ultimately decide on them. The rulebook is vague. A lot of it is very much open to interpretation. There are a lot of mitigating factors because you have to look at every individual case on a case-by-case basis. So it's... You can't compare one incident to another quite so much because every situation is different and there's a lot of variables that could affect an outcome one way or the other. And the fact that they rotate stewards every round. It's not the same 3 stewards every race. So, again, different eyeballs, different opinions on similar incidents. They could have a very different perspective on how something gets adjudicated. So, when you factor all of that in, it's natural you're going to get a lot of variance when it comes to results. It's never going to be, completely consistent. Ever. Because ultimately, it's human nature. At some point, a human being has to look at video footage and make a judgment call. So it's never going to be as consistent as people want it to be or think it's going to be. But there are a lot of little things that add to the inconsistency. And, yeah, Ty was asking, what do you think of race control's handling of Jeddah? Is the track too dangerous? Again, there's a little bit of this that's talked about in the podcast when that comes out later this week, early next week at the latest. I wouldn't say the track is necessarily too dangerous. I think it's borderline. Having a Monaco at 155 miles an hour with walls and very little margin for error is never ideal. I think the biggest issue with the whole weekend, and I did not know this until King mentioned it to me on the show, was that they flew in Bahrain stewards. And I think they were short-staffed over the course of the weekend. It did not help as well that there were big cut-offs. There was not enough open holes in the fences so that marshals could jump onto the track and salvage pieces of debris, for example. Or trying to fix the barrier that was down there because, Mick Schumacher put it in the wall at the early periods. I think that was a big reason as to why the race weekend ended up being as messy as it is. He used Monaco as a comparison because Monaco is like the all-star game for stewards because they bring in the best stewards in the world to run Monaco because it's all everybody coming together. It's one of the marquee rounds on the calendar. They bring in the best stewards for it because it's a dangerous track. So there's a lot of little things at there. It's a factor, and I don't think this track is great. I think Turn 2 and I think Sector 1 in general needs to be looked at, but it won't be in time because we're racing there again in 4 months' time. Saudi Arabia is round 2 on the 2022 calendar. So, we're racing there again in basically 4 months' time. So, we're going to be doing this again real soon, unfortunately. So, we're just going to have to suck this up for the time being. Which is a shame because it's a great time trial track and it's a great spectacle track, but for racing, I'm not convinced. Dan Eckersley. Alright, Dan, good to see you, buddy. The thing that frustrates me is how you can have such a season so close in two relatively matched cars and one or the other driver is a fraud depending on the fan base. Surely you could support one driver and elevate the other because it elevates both. You're right, but a lot of that is just copy-pasta text. Fraudulton or Verstappen's a fraud because it's all football. I've said it before. It's the footballization of Formula One support on Twitter. Everything is now like football. Politics is like that. Other sports discussions is like that, where we're not allowed to think two different things at the same time, and it's all 1,000 times more tribalistic. Where it's essentially like my dad's bigger than your dad sort of thinking. And like I said, it's either you're a Hamilton guy or a Verstappen guy, and you've already got your opinion made up, and a lot of people are just doing it for likes and tweets and attention. It doesn't make one of the two drivers a fraud if they lose one of the closest title fights in history. Oh, it doesn't make you a fraud at all, but they already knew that. So, again, it is what it is. Feel like I'm more dragged into this than most, given the driver I'm supporting just happens to be the F1 villain's teammate. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, they're the worst. Good to see you, buddy. Know that feeling. They're terrible. Marlene, thoughts on Massey after another controversial season? I try really hard not to give Michael Massey shit. Because Michael Massey was given an impossible task. And that was filling in Charlie Whiting's shoes when he died so suddenly. I wrote about this on the website, by the way, motorsport101.com. Charlie Whiting suddenly dies. Michael Massey was learning on the job from Charlie Whiting. He was eventually going to be Charlie's successor. But then Charlie suddenly dies, and then Michael Massey has to be thrust in to be race director at a moment, basically a drop of a hat. And, he gets an unfair level of bullshit because people think Massey is in charge of everything, and he's not. And that Michael Massey is basically in charge of the FIA and that whatever he says goes and they run with it. That's not the case. When it comes to things like incidents on track, all Michael Massey does is decide whether an incident is worth investigating by the stewards. and then the stewards decide what the penalty is. Like, that's not on Massey. That's on the stewards. But, and don't get me wrong, Charlie Whiting was brilliant at his job. And the reason why Charlie Whiting was brilliant at his job was because he was very rarely ever criticised. And as Lewis points out in the chat, and I think he's absolutely spot on with this take, we have far more information than we did 20 years ago. Even 10 years ago. We get FIA radio messages now. We get camera angles on F1 TV that we never got before. You know, this all ends up being put on social media super fast after a session finishes. We can now, from this chair, essentially play judge, jury, and executioner. And of course, because the entirety of being a sports fan is that armchair experience, that whole vibe of, I think I know better than the experts do, when we were sitting on this fucking chair going, oh yeah, that's definitely a penalty, that's definitely not a penalty, because we think we know better than they do. Michael Massey is in an unwinnable position, especially with the toxicity of the fan bases behind them. Like, I don't think Charlie Whiting would be this universally, beloved figure if he was in the middle of dealing with this season. Because one side of the fan base would definitely disagree with something that he's had to say or do regarding some of these incidents. But it's easy to tag it on Michael Massey because he's new. We are emotional as human beings, and we miss Charlie Whiting from a boss standpoint and from a personal standpoint, because obviously he died out of nowhere. And he was a universally liked and respected figure in Formula 1 by everybody. Even that time Sebastian told him to fuck off. Even then, he was a universally liked guy. Michael Massey was never, ever, ever gonna win that fight. Not in a million years. I'm not saying he's been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think he's been anywhere near as bad as people want to pretend that he is. Like, he's this guy that's destroying the sport. You know what's funny about Saudi Arabia? It was a very messily handled race. It felt like the inmates were running the asylum. And yet, despite all of that, the plea deal after the first red flag to deal with Verstappen cutting the corner was brilliant. Objectively, that was the best piece of stewarding that I have seen in years. Where he sits there, gets on the radio, uses his authority to give Red Bull a decision to make, to go, okay, I'm giving you the option to take a place penalty here, and we can just leave it out of the steward's hands entirely. And then Mercs were cool with it, Red Bull were cool with it, we got it sorted, it didn't need to go to an investigation or a steward's office, and it all lined up, and we had a fun moment because Esteban Ocon got to lead a Grand Prix for 7 seconds. It was wonderful. That was outstanding stewarding. That was brilliant. Nobody praised him for it, because we expect umpires and referees and officials in sport to be perfect, and anything less than that, they will be thrown under the bus. I thought the plea deal was funny. I thought it was great entertainment, especially given we got it on FIA radio, right, which has now become a new gimmick of this season. I thought that was an outstanding piece of stewarding. I thought that was brilliant. Did anybody praise him for it on Twitter? Fuck no, because he's already made his bed with a lot of fans, and a lot of fans are never going to cut him any sort of slack whatsoever. And I understand why a lot of people do. I'm not saying he's been perfect. He's made a lot of errors that I would not have handled in any way, shape or form that was better. like having sausage curbs or, you know, running Spark-U free under, you know, when it was clearly not safe to do so. Like little things like that, like the crane situation at Turkey in 2020 wasn't great either. Those are the big ones that stand out to me. But I don't think Michael Massey is a dreadful race director. And even if you think he is, who are you going to get who's better? What's the alternative? Are you bringing in the guys from Formula 2? Because they're not popular either. They're not liked either. The way they've had to handle a lot of their shit this year has not been well received either. So if you want to promote the Formula 2 crew up, be my guest. You're not going to like them much better. I promise you that. You know? So I always try to err on the side of empathy with Michael, because he nothing summed it up more than Belgium for me, because you can tell that Michael absolutely tried to get us a Grand Prix. The conditions were impossible in hindsight. It was too wet to have a Grand Prix that was safe, without question, right? But you could tell Michael was absolutely trying to get a Grand Prix in. Whether you want to be cynical and say it was just, I'll get 2 laps in so it's officially called as a race, you know, you could be the judge at home. I can't tell you how to think. But I really don't think Michael Massey is the villain that people want him to be. So, you know, it's just, Massey was brought in under really awful circumstances, and he was never going to get a fair shake from people, in my humble opinion. But yeah, you know, it's the way that we look at officials in sport in general. The best ones are the ones we don't talk about, and that's kind of crappy. But you know, it is what it is. But like I said, I'm glad I was able to at least say this publicly on the record, because I thought the plea deal was brilliant. It was chaos. It's not going to look great, but I thought that was awesome. And I thought it was genuinely common sense thinking that came into play. I think that deserved some praise. That's all. Checking the chat. Oh, hi Henry, good to see you, man. Thanks for providing some background noise while I write this shitty briefing paper. My pleasure, my friend. You look, Massey is too exposed. Yeah, like I said, that's definitely a factor. You know, like I said, we have far more accessibility than we did 10 years ago. Definitely. We now have a broadcast radio channel. We now have all the onboards, all the on-track action. We can pick out with a fine-tooth comb. Due to F1 TV, if you've got the Pro channel, you've got all the cars onboards, lap on lap. It's an incredible amount of information. And, yeah. We will always have this attitude behind our screens that we know better than they do. That's just how sports fans work. This is coming from a guy that watches a shit ton of sport, you know, so I know exactly how that feels. So making the FIA radio public is one of the best things they've done this season. I mean, look, it's extra insight. I'm never going to scoff at it. Yeah, Charlie had moments like that too, though. So we had Germany 2014 when they were rolling Sittil's car across the track on the single yellows. Yeah, spot on. Daniel saying Scott Elkins is pretty good. Elkins is alright, but I think he and how he runs his sport sometimes can be a bit silly. Dan Eckersley lobs grenade while Paul Tracy's looking for a job. I have no idea, you know, at all why Paul Tracy would ever want another gig in motorsport ever again. And yeah, forgetting about Ocon was a minor error anyway. It was easily corrected. Not a big deal. Just checking the phone. Just checking the old social media. Give me a minute. I don't have a job at the moment. I'm done with uni next year. Hire me. That could work, Marlene. That could work. Sadly, they're saying we might not get the radios next year. We'll see. I don't buy that for a minute. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think FOM's going to get rid of them because they provide extra drama. And, you know, F1 is balls deep on the show. Yikes. Thoughts on the new layout in Abu Dhabi? I think it's fine. Like, I want to see it in action first before I pass comment. I think, in theory, it's better than what it was before, but I'm not going to say for sure until I see it properly. I think it's better on paper, but you know, can't say with certainty. Scroll up a little bit, see if I've missed anything. For Moto GP in 2022, who is your money on and why is it Francesco Bagnaia? Because he has the best bike. It's that simple. Like, Ducati is the best all-round machine in the field. Bagnaia went on an absolute tear at the end of last season, and I think he's the fastest man in bike racing at the moment. I think put all that in a blender, hit Frappe, and you've got your title favourite. PT just wants to cry about being beaten by his own game by a girl full time. Yeah, probably not ideal. Look, it was probably getting to a point at NBC where Paul Tracy wasn't worth the trouble he was bringing in. He did not handle SRX well. He was already grossing people out during the 500 this year with his seeming foot fetish with Danica Patrick, which was weird as fuck. Like, honestly. Like, I can't think of a more pair of weird people in motorsport in one room than Paul Tracy and Danica Patrick, if you know what Danica does on the side when it comes to like her podcast and shit. It's like weird people hanging around weird people. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, Zoe, you're spot on. He absolutely milked it. No doubt about that. You know, so I just don't think he was worth the trouble anymore. He'd already been cut down to 6 races this past season in IndyCar as a commentator. So it was clear they were down on him. They weren't prepared to take him to every race weekend, only a handful of the bigger ones. Look, if Hinchcliffe wants to juggle potentially IMSA and being a broadcaster, I think that is a born spot for James Hinchcliffe. who I think would be a brilliant broadcaster. He is the most charismatic dude I've seen in motorsport behind a microphone. He's brilliant at it. He's a natural. He's a naturally brilliant guy. He's engaging. He's energetic. He's funny. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He gets along with all of the paddock. He's a likable guy. He's a fantastic ambassador for the series. He's recognizable in America because he was on Dancing with the Stars before. Was a runner-up in that. It is built for James Hinchcliffe. It really is. I hope, as a fan, he takes it, but I completely understand if he still wants to drive another series. Like, NBC should just throw a boatload of money in his direction and say, Hinch, we want you for all these big rounds. Like, I hope that happens. I hope they can pay him enough where he doesn't have to worry about driving a car. I don't think NBC will do that because Lee Diffie commentates everything, which kind of suggests to me they're not paying him all that well. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they pay Lee Diffie all the money because he's a great all-round commentator. And Townsend Bell are good broadcasters. I like them both. I think a three-man booth of Diffie, Bell, and Hinchcliffe would be phenomenal. I'd love to watch that. That would certainly make me want to watch more pre-race coverage, certainly. Yeah, I agree with you, Henry. It wasn't like PT was some outstanding commentator. He wasn't very good either. Like, just so cliched, so, foot in mouth when it comes to his comments. Like Zoe mentions obsessions with Rossi being angry because he drives aggressively, therefore he must be pissed, even though Rossi is like the most introverted dude you could imagine. Like, it's lazy commentary as far as I'm concerned. That's my perspective on it. Good riddance. Paul Tracy's a dick. He has been for a long time. The fact that he used Dale Earnhardt to justify quote-unquote cancel culture is some bullshit. Like that was last year. That's when I had the final straw with PT. Like, honestly, like, that was when I was just like, you know what, fuck off, Paul. We don't need you here. Like, it's ridiculous stuff. Andrew, favourite race of the season? Can be F1, MotoGP, or IndyCar. Ooh, good question. F1's had some bangers this year. France was great. Catalonia was pretty good. I really enjoyed Sochi. Which is a weird thing to say. Trust me. For me, it kind of has to be MotoGP. I want to say it was the Styria race, not the Austria race. I can't remember what they officially named it out of the two. Brad Binder's refusal to pit during Austria is, and I've been watching motorsport for 21 years, one of the bravest calls I have ever seen in the history of motorsport. Brad Binder won a MotoGP race with 5 laps to go, pissing down with rain on slicks. It was mental. This was already a MotoGP Race of the Year candidate. It was already a Race of the Year contender even before the rain started coming down with Quartararo and Marquez and Zarco all in the mix. It was already going to be like a top tier race, and then the rain came down and we had the most crazy batshit finish in the history of MotoGP. So for me, I'm voting Brad Binder in Austria. I beat the flag to flag strategy on dry tyres. Unbelievable race. Like, it was jaw-dropping. It was the Austrian GP. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. I didn't know which one they named it because I know they do regions and countries, but, like, Lord Binder was I called him Lord Shithouse after that one, but it was the most unbelievable finish I've ever seen. Aragon, that's a great shout, Andrew. Aragon for MotoGP was a brilliant race. Like, Bagnaia versus Marquez was a tremendous fight. The best one of the year, as far as I'm concerned, because that one actually had some passing attempts thrown in. That was a brilliant, brilliant fight. Like, for Bagnaia to beat Marquez at one of his strongest tracks, brilliant race. That was the Bagnaia's coming home sort of moments. Like, you wait a really long time for a Grand Prix and then fucking 4 come along at once. That was the, no, Bagnaia is an alien. Like, he really is moment right there. Definitely one for the future. But, Motorsport Fanboy, hi Aviandra, says, do you think Ayagura could replace Nakagami at LCR for 2023 if the former had another great season or made a championship charge and the latter underperforms? Definitely. Ayagura is the most talented dude to come out of Japan since Nakagami, as far as I'm concerned. He had a really good under-the-radar rookie season in Moto 2 last year. It would have stood out a lot more if it wasn't for Raul Fernandez being absolutely insane in Moto 2 last year. So, you know, it kind of, like, Agura's really good rookie year kind of got brushed under the rug. Because that rookie class who came up, like, because I think it was Arenas, Agura, and Arbolino that all came up. And it was clear Agura was the best of the 3 by miles. Like, so, you know, like, Agura is good. If Agura has a top 5 season in Moto 2 next year, Honda might start sniffing. Because Nakagami is a good rider, but he's not a great rider. Like, he's a borderline top 10 guy. On a good day, he's a top 5 rider. On a bad day, he's not scoring points. And, like, Honda badly wants another Japanese star. Another homegrown talent. And Agura could be the guy. He could be. He's a good rider. So, you know, certainly stuff to look out for. France, Bahrain, and Brazil were the best F1 races. Agreed, Henry. Indy 500 for IndyCar and the MotoGP race, Brad Binder. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, Daniel makes a great shout as well. Monaco Ypres was stunning. The best Formula E race of all time. It was such a palate cleanser after how shit Valencia went that they went to Monaco and they had the best Formula E race of all time. That is a race that could hold up against anything this year in any of the mainstream series. Monaco, if you've not watched the Monaco Ypres, it's up in full on YouTube. Go out of your way to watch it. It was a brilliant, brilliant season. Brilliant race, not a season. Season was good. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. Shithouse all over the place, but yeah, it was a great race. Just a great shout, Daniel. I think it will certainly be on the nominees list. He's there saying, Dre, I know you're a snooker fan. What did you think about Sean Murphy's comments about amateur players shouldn't be allowed to take part in tournaments? I think it was a heat of the moment thing. I spoke to my mate at work about this last week. For those guys who don't know, it was the UK Championship, one of the 3 majors on the snooker calendar. A bit like how tennis has like the Grand Slam, snooker has the UK's, the Masters, and the World Championship. It was the UK's, and Sean Murphy was knocked out in round 1 by an amateur player that filled in as a COVID substitute. Because the UK Championship was the 128 tour car holders for snooker. They all automatically form the bracket, but in case somebody had to pull out due to COVID, the highest ranking amateur fills in the spot, and so on and so forth. Murphy was knocked out. I think he lost 6-5 in his first round match against this amateur dude from I think it was a Chinese fella, and then Murphy went on some sort of mad tirade about how, you know, I've worked hard for this tour card. You know, amateurs don't feel the same pressure, so they shouldn't be allowed to take part against professionals. To which I say, bullshit. Quite frankly, I say this as a darts fan as well. One of their majors, the UK Open, it's the FA Cup of darts because amateurs can qualify and earn the right to take part. That's part of the charm of the tournament, is that literally unknown stars can go on deep runs. It probably was a heat of the moment comment from Sean, and I think some of the backlash he got was awful. I saw that he got death threats on social media, which is just fucking awful. And look, I don't agree with what Murphy said at all. I thought it was sour grapes from Sean, to be honest with you. I thought it was bitter comments because he was beaten by an amateur, and Murphy's like, I think, the world number 4, and he was the world championship runner-up this year. Like, Sean, you literally made 200 grand for finishing second at the world championships this year. Like, no one is taking food off your plate, okay? You're eating good. You were able to turn pro at 15. You were the youngest ever world champion at one point. Like, dude, you're not starving, okay? You've made 4 million quid in prize money alone in your career, and you're one of these self-entitled ambassadors for the sport. Like, it's not the amateur's fault that people are not expecting him to win. That's how being an amateur goes. You're one of the best players in the world. That is unfortunately what comes with being a high-ranking seed. It is what it is. It's not like, it's not fair that you're expected to win, but that's how sport works. So I didn't like Sean Murphy's comments. I didn't like the fact that Neil Robertson backed him up either. I thought that was just silly. I felt like people, look, they're protecting their interests, and that I can understand. So, you know, I get it, but I strongly disagreed with what he had to say. Let's have a look. Some of these other comments. Have I watched the docu-series? Not really. Honestly, like, I'm considering whether I even want to watch Formula E next year. Like, I like the series, but I'm not sure if I want to keep watching it full time. Like, it's fun to a degree. I think the racing's mostly good, but I don't know, maybe the Gen 3 cars pull me back in, but I just don't find it particularly captivating week to week, to be honest. Maybe the Gen 3 cars and the new qualifying format will pull me back in. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm not a massive fan. Final Orb saying, I'm really glad they're ditching the old FE quali system. Even Jack Nichols said he didn't like the old system on a podcast. I get it. The problem is that you can't, because Formula E's tracks are all smaller, you can't run 20 cars on track at the same time, or 24 cars on track at the same time. So they had to split them up, and it was never fair because there was always going to be more rubber put down for the later guys in groups, and championship orders was never ideal. But going to this really elongated knockout tournament system, I think just seems a bit too convoluted for the sake of it. Like, that's my opinion anyway. I think, like we'll see. We'll see how it goes in practice. But, yeah, FE has lost a lot of its charm, a lot of bullshit that still happens and has been around since season 1. Yeah, look, Valencia was a big smoking gun moment, like, for Formula E in general, and I think a lot of people, questioned the direction of the series. That's my opinion, anyway. Checking the chat. Considering this will be Kimi's last race and weekend in the paddock, what's your favourite moment of him? Probably his first run at McLaren. Like, the greatest thing about Kimi as a driver was taking advantage of the V10 era and those low fuel sort of almost qualifying runs that he did when he was at McLaren. Like, I remember when he put 35 seconds on Fischer-Keller at Monza in a low fuel setup, and you just think, fuck me, Kimi Räikkönen just had talent pouring out of him in the early 2000s. You looked at him and you just go, damn, this dude is special. Like, it was very, very easy to just go, wow, like, this dude is something else. Like, Kimi probably should have won 2 or 3 titles. He only got 1, and that was that late one he got at Ferrari. So, you know. So that's how I look at it. But you know, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm a huge fan of Kimi the person. But, you know, Kimi, oh boy, that was a trip. Two 2005 Kimi, yeah. 03 and 05. Certainly right up there. 03 and 05 was probably peak Kimi. Those were seasons where you just go, fuck, wow. There we go. Yep, sorry about that. Again, OBS disconnected briefly for a second there. Should be back on now. Sorry about that. My connection in this room has never been great, unfortunately. My box is downstairs, like a good 30 feet away, which is never ideal. So, not great, Chief, but, you know, you make the most of it. Can we give some credit on how insane Montoya was in 03? He was literally Schumy's closest challenger for most of that season. Yeah, Montoya was a great driver. Like, Montoya was a great talent who just pissed off too many people. It's that simple. He fed out with Williams people. He fucked off. Went to McLaren. And wasn't good enough to justify his spot when Hamilton came along. Ron Dennis wanted a return on his 10 years of investment in the golden boy, that was Lewis Hamilton, and it worked out in his favour. It worked out brilliantly, you know, so what can you say? It worked out in the end. Hi Carlton, good to see you. We're talking about Montoya. Oh boy. Yeah, keep those questions coming in though, guys. Like, I'm prepared to go on till 9:30, another 45 minutes if we get enough quality questions. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up at 9, you know? But, if you get some good questions, I'm prepared to go to 9:30 and make it a 2.5 hour long show. That'd be pretty neat, wouldn't it? Uh, talking about Montoya. Oh boy. Would love to have seen Montoya go to Red Bull from McLaren. It would have changed at the early 2010s. Yeah, could have done. Final update. I know it's been a while since season's end, but will you do a MotoGP review like you did with Indy? Really enjoyed that. No, unfortunately. If we did a MotoGP season review, it would basically be me and Cam talking a lot. If you really want my thoughts on MotoGP season, we just didn't have time to record it because we were really getting into the meat and potatoes end of Formula One, and we wanted to prioritise that. If you want to read my thoughts on the season, I did a 3-part season review on the website, motorsport101.com. Check the blog section. I did reviews of all the factory teams and the year in general. I do recommend checking that out. I was really quite proud of writing that. It went down really well. I really liked how I put that together. Top 10 drivers this year. 10's a bit much in a 20-car field, isn't it? Hang on. Let me pull my notepad app out here on my computer. And let's give this some thought. So the 10 best drivers this year. Verstappen and Hamilton are in a different league. They're going to be 1 and 2. I think Norris deserves a mention. I think Leclerc deserves a mention. Sainz. Gasly. Do you put the reserves in there? I mean, Checo won a race, Bottas won a race. Are they top 10 level? I mean, you probably put in Ocon and Alonso in there. Vettel, maybe? George Russell podium. It's not a bad shout, Libby. Maybe Russell. Something like that. I'd have to give that some thought. Maybe if I'm desperate for an article in a down week in the off-season, you might see it up on the website. But something like that. I'd have to give that a bit more thought. And I want to keep it moving a little bit. But it would probably be something like that. Would Foggia ever go up to Moto 2? He should have done this year, really, but I think he wants to outright win a world title. And next year in Moto 3 is probably his best chance of doing so. I mean, really, on paper, the 2 biggest threats he's probably going to have in Moto 3 next year will be Eisen Guevara and probably Jarmasia. So probably something like that. So I can understand why he'd stick around for another year. Moto 2 is where mediocre talent goes to die. So maybe if he puts himself in the shop window a bit more by winning the Moto 3 title next year, maybe that could put him in better stead for 2023. Because him just being a runner-up to a 16-year-old probably isn't the best look. No, Carlton, we're not mentioning Latifi. Stop it. Not even you believe that. Daniel asking, good question actually. Do you think Formula 2 champions should be allowed to continue competing in Formula 2? I wouldn't be against it. Like, look, I wouldn't be totally against it. Like, I'm trying to give this some thought. I'm trying to weigh up the pros and cons. The way I see it is the best way of me wording this? The problem is that you can't make a career for yourself in the juniors. That's the biggest problem I have. If the juniors paid the drivers decently, where they could make a living off of being a specialist in Formula 2 or Formula 3 or whatever, and the young talent could still come through if they performed well enough, then I'd be fine. Then I'd be fine with no champions rule. Like, that I'd be completely fine with. The problem is that you don't make money in the juniors. You can't make a career for yourself in the juniors. And if you're not going up within 2 years, you're probably not going to make F1. Like, guys like Guan Yu Zhou are the exception these days. Like, you'd have to be extremely careful with that rule. Like, the way I look at it, would someone winning 2 Formula 2 titles make them any more desirable to a Formula 1 team? And my honest answer is probably not. Like, I look at the Moto 2 situation we had a couple of years ago, when Tito Rabat decided to stay on after winning a title there and not go into MotoGP. And Johann Zarco did the same. Zarco won 2 titles in Moto 2. It didn't, like, he got a slightly better seat out of it. He got Tech 3 instead of, I think he was offered LCR the first year he won the championship, and he didn't want to move up to a production Honda. So, like, I don't know. You'd have to be careful with that. Like, that's the problem. Like, and Henry's hit the nail on the head with the problem here. The problem is that there's not a guaranteed seat in Formula 1 if you win the title in Formula 2. That's the biggest issue. If you're not guaranteed a seat, you know, if you're not guaranteed a seat in Formula 1 at the end of it, then what's the point? Because guys like Oscar Piastri or Callum Ilott will just miss out. And then they're kind of stuck doing other things. Like, the aim of these junior series should be getting guys into Formula 1. Right now, Formula 1 is in a logjam at the moment. There's not enough seats available. There's too much young talent that's come through in the last 3 or 4 years. And there's no new teams to facilitate extra seats. So there's nothing you can do. You're stuck. And having guys like Oscar Piastri race for another year is not going to solve anything, because unless a super prospect comes up from Formula 3, Piastri's probably just going to win again next year. So then what do you do? And, like, is winning 2 Formula 2 titles going to make you any more desirable? We already know how good Piastri is. He's fucking brilliant. He should be in F1 right now. Winning a second F2 title is not going to make anybody more convinced of this. At least that's my opinion. So, I mean, if you want to let him race in the series, great, but you're probably stunting development even further. So, it's probably not helpful in the grand scheme of things. Do you think you'll go back to watching F2 and F3 now? I still watch F2 and F3 now, Final. We just don't talk about it on the show. I don't know if it's so much elitism as people generally aren't interested in motorsport that isn't F1, so it's not going to be attracted to sponsors. Yeah, JB's probably right down there in the comments in that, like, you can't make a career for yourself in the juniors. Like, I know there was a joke in there about Ralph Boschung. Ralph Boschung struggles for cash. At almost every point in his F2 career, he's in and out of the series because he can't afford to be in the series full time, because a full season is about £2.5 million. Related question: where will the junior talent go? There are only so many FE and IndyCar seats. Sports cars. They'll end up doing GT racing somewhere, most likely, because most GT series, you need 2 or 3 drivers per car. So you've got much more of an open basket. You're absolutely right. FE and IndyCar only have so many seats, and IndyCar is starting to get this problem now. Because it's going to get to a point where guys will just think, I'm going to go to America, and then realising that IndyCar's not beating their door down for seats either. Like, I think this could be the last major year we see Formula 2 ladder to IndyCar imports, unless they're like one and done. Like, Christian Lundgaard's going over to race in IndyCar this year. Callum Ilot's coming over this year. You know, there are talented dudes that are going to make the way over. And let's not forget, America's got its own ladder. And they're going to have 2 Indy Lights graduates this year. Like, David Malukas is going to be driving in IndyCar next year. In fact, 3 graduates, actually, because Devlin DeFrancesco is moving up. Kyle Kirkwood's driving for Foyt. We made a whole video about him and his future career on YouTube. I highly recommend you check it out if you need to know more about the American ladder system and why we were nervous about Kyle Kirkwood's future. So, David Malukas, Kyle Kirkwood, and Devlin DeFrancesco are all moving up into IndyCar this year as well. So I think you're going to get a very similar situation with Formula 1, where you're going to have IndyCar's own dude in Indy Lights come up. And let's not forget, the difference between the road to Indy and Formula 2 is the road to Indy guarantees you enough prize money to get at least 3 races in the series itself, including the 500, which is really what we're all here for, the Indy 500. Because hey, if you do well at the 500, it will pay back your prize money before you've even started. And I think because of sponsor money and because of homegrown talent, I don't think IndyCar will beat the door down for European junior talent all that much. So I think they'll get to the same breaking point that Formula 1's got very soon. And that's crazy when you consider that IndyCar is having a huge grid next year. IndyCar, I think, is going to have 26 full-time cars next year. That's huge. That's a massive number. They have way more seats than F1, and they've got the same problem. Do wonder if there's going to be... He's going to be in sports cars. Viandra, definitely. Schwarzen's another guy that there's no point in him taking part in Formula 2 for a 3rd season. If he was going to get an F1 seat, he would have gotten one last year. No doubt. Luckily, because I think putting a youngster in a sports car that early is risky, to say the least, but certainly the GT classes. Yeah, I think Zoe's got a point. I think we'll end up with more dudes like Renus VK who just skip Europe altogether and just say, you know what? We can't afford to race in Formula 3 and Formula 2. These are what the bills are going to be. We can't afford to pay for 4 million quid to get us through the ladder. And we're just going to go straight and move to America, and we're going to go all in on... Because at least the road to Indy gives you guarantees. That's something that Formula 1 and the junior ladder doesn't have. Daniel asking, should the F1 Junior Series follow the W's 50 million quid to cover the costs? That's not going to happen. I think the junior ladder needs restructuring, but boring the W Series model is not going to work. And, like, in my humble opinion, this is going to be controversial. I don't think the W Series knows what it wants to be. I'm going to be careful how I word this because a lot of people are just going to call me sexist for this. Like, I like the W Series. I like what it's trying to do. But it is not... For the series, it's not their number one interest to bump women up the ranks. They're running it as a for-profit racing company. And the money they're giving out to its drivers is not enough for them to be pushing people up the ladder. They need a much bigger prize pool. Like, Chadder's got $500,000 for winning the championship this year. That's not even a full season of F3. Like, it's half of an F3 season, and there's a lot of people that are going to be in there saying that Jamie Chadwick, for example... I know I'm dropping frames, I'm sorry about that, guys. There's not much I can do about that, internet's a bit funny. Like, what's the best way of me saying this? There's a lot of people that are pushing for Chadders to go into Formula 3 full-time next year. Because what's the point in her competing in the W Series year on year, collecting these decent checks, and therefore stunting all the other women that you're competing against? I don't like the fact that the W Series is going to basically tell 80% of all the women in their series, you're not good enough to race at a higher level before we've even started. And then even if you do end up being good, the money is not going to be enough to make you kick on to the next stage of your career or the next stage of the ladder. Because the W Series gives you super license points. 15 of them. It's a significant number. But you have to give up those 15 points if you want to keep competing in it. So, and look, Chadders is 23. If she's got any chance of a big seat in the future, she's got to start thinking about moving up now, unless she's just going to be a driver for hire on, like, second tier level motorsport, like Extreme E, like the W Series, like maybe prototype racing, maybe LMP2, because I know she did a rookie test for sports cars the other day. Maybe that is where she ends up. But, like, it feels like that series is more for profit than it is for what it actually claims it's trying to do. And again, it's one of those things that I wouldn't be able to get away with saying on Twitter because I would be dogpiled on for it. But, like, I respect the series. I want it to do well. I really do want it to do well. Genuinely, I've watched it. I root for everybody involved. There's some friends that I have that work for them, but I think what they're doing is ultimately counterproductive. I think when me and King talked about this, King had an idea. King's idea was, if you win the W Series, they should have the W Series buy out a Formula 4 seat in a regional series and then run them in Formula 4 instead and pay for their seats so they could come up the ladder that way, rather than just giving them some super license points, putting them on the support bill, and then they end up not going anywhere. So, I liked that idea more than just giving them a $500,000 check for winning and saying, hey, have at it. Because, unfortunately, the reality is junior motorsport is only getting more expensive, and $500,000 is not going to cut it, unfortunately. And I'm not sure Chadders is good enough for Formula 3 level on a global stage. She could get eaten alive in that series. Like, we've seen Sophia Floresh try, and she's largely been mediocre. She's ended up better in sports cars and prototypes over there, basically. I just don't think this series is this, like, this generation of drivers is not going to benefit from the W Series. It's going to be the next generation, the next 10 years. And I want to see what they do with the series. Because I just think that not giving them a check is not going to be enough. Like, you need to fund seats. Seats are what matters here, not money. You know? Like, if you're finishing like 5th or 6th on the ladder and you're only getting like $50,000 or $80,000, what are you going to do with that? That barely covers your bills for the year. Like, you sit there, you just go, well, what's the point? You know, it's not going to get you anywhere. Like, so I think the W Series needs to make its mind up. Does it want to be a for-profit racing series, and you know they want to play off, you know, the obvious unique selling point of women as racing drivers, or does it want to genuinely push people up the ladder? Because right now, I don't think you can do both. That's my honest opinion. King's not crying in King's crying in a corner. King would agree with me. Like, King knows more about the junior ladder than I do, and he had his idea as to how to solve the series. And I thought it was a better idea. Pardon me. Yeah, that's another good point, Daniel. Running Formula 4 cars would probably be a better way of going. Like, anyone surprised that Chadders was on another level to everybody else in the W Series this year has forgotten that she won the first series of the W Series. She won the first championship. They didn't race in 2020, but she raced in Formula 3 in Asia, so she had even more experience in similar cars as to what they ended up racing in. And then they came back this year with a whole bunch of even more experience, and she, besides Alice Powell, she ran the field over. So, you know, it's not straightforward. That's my humble opinion anyway. I'd like to see Chadwick on the road to Indy, actually. That would be a much better fit for her, Dan. She'd be better off in the States trying maybe USF 2000 or something like that. Or maybe Indy Lights. Like that check would actually probably get you an Indy Lights drive. Given that they give you, I think it's $1.3 million for winning the Indy Lights Championship towards an IndyCar seat. But again, I don't think the W Series wants to do that. I don't think it wants to run Formula 4 because I don't think it wants to play complete ball with the ladder. I think they want to be a standalone series. Do you think Raul Fernandez will leave the KTM setup after 2022 with his comments on the team and his teammate in postseason testing? No. Like, Raul Fernandez has already walked back a good amount of his comments regarding what he said about KTM in the off-season and how, you know, he felt like Gardner was being favoured. He's already walked a lot of that shit back. I think he's just going to shut up and ride. I think, my personal theory is that I think Fernandez wanted to go to Yamaha. I think he wanted... I think he felt like... I think that he basically felt like Yamaha was a better fit for his riding style. Rather than KTM, which has not been great for the last year or so. They've been a bit up and down, horribly inconsistent. So, you know, it's... I could see why he would want to go to Yamaha, but he signed a 2-year deal with KTM. That's the risk you take. If he wants to really get Yamaha's attention, the best thing he can do is shut up and ride the nuts off that Tech 3. The problem is that the Tech 3 isn't a great motorcycle. And you've got Remy Gardner as your teammate alongside him. Look, I think Raul Fernandez is a more talented bike rider than Remy Gardner is. I think Gardner's consistency won him the day. I think it's easy to forget that Fernandez was an incredible rookie in Moto 2 this year, but he was still a rookie. One crash too many is probably what did his title in. But as a talent, he is outrageous. Like, Simon Patterson wrote a piece the other day saying that Jorge Martin is the most talented rookie since Marquez. No. The most talented rookie since Marquez is joining the sport this year. Raul Fernandez is a monster. Like, you do not win 7 races in a Moto 2 season by chance. Like, you don't fluke that. That is one of the hardest series in all of motorsport to win Grand Prix in. So Fernandez to win that many races as a rookie against Remy Gardner as a teammate. Fernandez is a phenomenal bike rider. Like, factories should have been lining up to sign Raul Fernandez. He showed this sort of freakish potential when he was in Moto 3. He had breakneck pace. He had I can break the toe level of pace in Moto 3. I ain't seen that since Martin. And Martin is also really goddamn good. So, Fernandez, shut up and ride. You're good enough where you don't need to worry about team politics. Although I've heard it on the inside from a lot of people that KTM is not a nice place to work. So, maybe that's worth a comment as well. What was King's idea, said Daniel? King's idea was essentially the prize for the W Series would be, instead of cash, it would be a guaranteed seat in a regional Formula 4 championship. Whether it be Germany, Italy, whatever. You winning would get you you would buy a team out in a major Formula 4 series, have a guaranteed seat there as the prize for coming through and winning the W Series, and then you get to go to race in a Formula 4 series essentially for free because they would run the team year to year, and then you just leave it and you see what happens. It would probably take 5 to 10 years to see if it made any real impact, but if they were truly about trying to get women up the junior ladder, it was probably a better shout than just writing out a check for somebody. Because Chadders is, in my opinion, no further along in her racing career than she was 2 years ago. Like, the closest we've got is Tatiana Calderon in Formula 2 last year, and she was not good. Like, she was bad, unfortunately. Easy girl to root for. Easy woman to root for. Like talented, definitely, but not on that sort of level, unfortunately. Like I said, what I'm talking about now, you're not going to have an impact for it now. It's going to be something that will have an impact 10 years down the road. That was King's idea, and I agreed with him. I thought that was better than what we've got right now. In slight defence of Sophia, she was with the worst team on the grid that year. Yeah, that's fair to say. Also, Sophia had a small accident. Yeah. We're talking. I'm well aware of Macau. That certainly didn't help either. Don't get me wrong. Sophia's not helped herself with her comments on social media, because she's always believed that her way is the best way, and that's just diving in 2-footed, trying to climb up the ladder the old-fashioned way. And I get why she's been so defensive about it, because you believe what you're doing works. You don't want to disbelieve that, because if you do, where the hell do you go from there? But I was never a fan of her basically divide and conquer tactics of getting into arguments with some of the women that were in the W Series, like Chadwick, like Powell, like Kimmerline, and just basically saying, oh, well, what's the point of your poxy little series? Why don't you just come with me and join and race in sports cars or race in Formula 3 instead? Which I can respect. I don't think what she's saying is baseless, but at the same time, it pissed off a lot of people, because a lot of people want supporting women in motorsport to be holding hands, singing Kumbaya, going, let's bring everybody else up. And I think it was seen that her comments were basically just bitchy more than anything else, and basically not helpful. So again, I understand that way of thinking too, but I don't think there's a I don't think there's a wrong answer on this, personally. But, hey. You know, it's complicated, to say the least. It's not a straightforward answer. I've got another 10 minutes left, so again, I'll take a few more questions and whatnot. It's been a great time. Still 25 of you in here, which I'm really grateful for. Who is your Moto 2 title favourite in 2022? Ooh, good question. Let me put up the entry list while I'm here, just so I can refresh my memory as to who's in and who isn't. Because honestly, I joked that, or one of my friends joked that it was going to be Aaron Cannett's year in Moto 2 this year. I laughed at him at first. The more I think about it, the more it makes sense, given that Pons has produced many a title champion himself, and Cannett is a good rider. Whether he can take that next step up and win multiple races to win a title remains to be seen. But I don't think there's one overriding favourite going into Moto 2 next season. I think Ayagura could be in the mix. I think Pedro Acosta could be in the mix. If he's got any bit of the talent he had in Moto 3, it's hard to rule him out. I think Augusto Fernandez, his own teammate, could be one to watch. He seemed to get a lot of his mojo back towards the end of last season, where he was challenging for podiums and wins again. So I think that Augusto Fernandez is going to be up there. I think Jorge Navarro at Pons could be one to watch. Pons produces champions, and Navarro has got a lot of speed. That could be one to watch. If you put a gun to my head right now, I would probably say Augusto Fernandez. But I think there's 4 or 5 guys who could get in the mix, potentially, if the chips land in their favour. Do you think Sam Bird will ever get an FE title? Should have done this year, really. Jaguar was one of the strongest teams in Formula E. Sam Bird has been in every single Formula E race. He's mad experienced. He's an incredibly talented driver, always has been. He's got every reason why he can win an FE title. Do I think his favourite for this year is Fodor Masks? Maybe? Look, we had a Formula 2 decider that had like 15 dudes eligible to win the title. Like, I don't know how anyone with open confidence could throw out a name to challenge for the title, like, or as a title favourite. I guess that's the point. Like, the sport is complete and utter chaos. It's a fucking lottery. So it's hard for me to say anyone is going to be locked into that sort of position. It's wild. Let's have a look here. Katori, Tatiana got thrashed by everyone in F2. Sure, most came from how bad Arden really was. See why it became HWA and where they are now. Bad team that dragged the driver back into F2 because the driver walked. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Team wasn't great, but Tatiana wasn't exactly bailing them out of anything either, unfortunately. Can Alex be the first to... Like, Katori, do I know you from social media? I've never seen you in this chat before, but you seem familiar. Can Alex be the first to retain an IndyCar championship since Dario? Definitely. Why not? Chip Ganassi was the best team in the sport last year. And they had 3 dudes challenging for a championship until the last couple of rounds last year. Marcus Ericsson was a title contender in IndyCar until about 3 rounds out. And you've got Scott Dixon in your team. And Dixon will want revenge. I don't know if Dixon is really in decline because he's still, you know, he's still Dixon, and I know he's in his early 40s now, but he's still a phenomenal driver. The field is stacked, so it's hard. It's going to be a mountain job to retain that title, but he's got more than enough talent to do so. That's never been the issue with Alex Palou, clearly. But Pato O'Ward's going to be hungry. Colton Herta is going to be raw. I think Colton Herta is the threat. I really do. Colton Herta is a monster. Like, I look at Palou, and Palou ticks all the boxes. Colton Herta has that 7th gear that scares me. He reminds me of like Marc Marquez, where he could just pull out superhuman shit in his car on occasion, where I just go, damn. Like, you could kind of see, like, why Andretti was all in on Colton Herta, because the man is a monster. Pato O'Ward is right up there as well. I think McLaren needs more resources in IndyCar, but, I mean, who was the second best team in IndyCar this season, says Daniel? Chip Ganassi was head and shoulders above the field. Like, Penske were all over the place. Andretti were all over the place. Like, the one consistent entity in IndyCar this year was Chip Ganassi Racing. Everybody else was beating each other up. Like, those teams had individual cars who were strong, but not teams who were strong. Penske still had Joseph Newgarden, who ended up being championship runner-up. McLaren had Pato O'Ward, who was also brilliant. Andretti had Colton Herta. Nobody else was on his level at Andretti. The second most consistent team, you could argue, was Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing with Rahal and Sato. And Rahal, you could make an argument, should have won the 500. Rahal had arguably the best car in the field, and then then he lost the tyre coming out of the pits. Like, no other team was great in IndyCar last year besides Chip Ganassi Racing. Like, everybody else had significant problems. Penske almost got 2 cars bumped in the 500. Andretti was a mess. Like, Hinchcliffe was driving hurt, Hunter Ray was cooked, Alex Rossi underperformed again for the 2nd year in a row, and Herta was a title contender, but if he didn't wreck in Nashville, he would have been in the mix. Like, the Nashville wreck completely derailed Herta's season. Because that was a race where he was clearly the fastest man in the field all day. So, you know, there was a lot of one-car teams out there. So, yeah, I mean, Alex can easily retain, but that field is so good, I can't say anything with confidence. Daniel Montiero, is there any hope for Felix Rosenqvist? His seat could be in danger. He was great at Chip 2 years ago. I don't know why he ever walked away from that team. He was challenging for wins there 2 years ago. Like, I don't know if it was the same as, like, James Hinchcliffe, where it was, like, big fish in small pond syndrome, where he wanted to be a bigger player in a smaller team. And he didn't want to be Dixon's backup in the number 10 car when he was at Chip 2 years ago. But Rosenqvist can drive a car. There is no doubt about that. But he was one of the worst guys in the field last year. And him getting hurt didn't help either, because that was a nasty crash he had. Yeah, I can't disagree with you guys in the chat. If Herta is consistent, cancel Christmas. It's over. Herta has, like, 2 genuine banker rounds on the calendar now. If they keep going to Nashville, he's going to be super fast around there, and he's brilliant at Laguna Seca. In IndyCar, having banker rounds is huge. It's like Marc Marquez in MotoGP. You knew he was going to win in Argentina, and you knew he was going to win at Cota, and you knew he was going to win at the Saxon Ring. He had like 3 rounds he was basically guaranteed to win. Like, if Herta has that in IndyCar, there's going to be problems for a lot of people in that field. Because I think on sheer talent alone, Colton Herta might be the number 1 dude in the series. And this is a series that has got Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon in it. Dixon is pound for pound as good as anyone in the world. Joseph Newgarden should have been in F1 about 3 years ago, but we don't look at IndyCar guys like that anymore. You know, like, I think Sir Frank Williams was really the last team principal in F1 that really gambled on talent outside of Europe. People just don't do that in F1 anymore. And if he's anything like he was at Long Beach, where he won from fucking 14th on the grid, it's over. Like, Colton Herta was insanely good at times last season. So, like I said, there are plenty of talented guys out there. You know, plenty of talent out there at IndyCar, and Palou is absolutely up there as one of them. It just worries me because I think there are guys with bigger intangibles that he's going to be competing against. Like, Palou has never made me go wow in terms of what he can do in an IndyCar. Colton Herta has made me go wow on several occasions. Has made me go wow on several occasions. That's what worries me about Palou. Consistency is not sexy. I completely get it. It wins you championships. But it's not the sort of thing that will make you jump off your chair and go, fuck me, this kid is talented. Like, and don't get me wrong, that's not fair on Palou because he's brilliant. He's a sensational race car driver. I'm not sure he's the best dude in the series. Like, that really is an endorsement of IndyCar more than anything else. Last call for questions, folks. Last call. It's 9:30. This is last orders. We're at the pub. We're closing early due to COVID. But, yeah. I will take any question I get in the chat for the next 5 minutes. So get them in now, basically. That's a fair point, Zoe. Yeah, it's a very fair point. Boy almost spoiled Helios 4500. I'm not going to say in a chat what I'm getting my brother for Christmas. He's going to find out. It's part of the surprise. Felix's career is actually a huge what if. Yeah, a lot of it is because there's a reason I called him driver for hire. He could have done a bunch of different things. Best helmet design this season, all series. Oh God, there's been so many. I'm not gonna lie. I've always liked the basic design of Hamilton's helmets. The rainbow helmet is fucking awesome. Like, it's just a good all-round design with the stars on the side. I've always liked Hamilton's helmet. Like, his base helmet design has always been ace. It's always been really good since going to Mercedes. And the rainbow version of it is fantastic. So if one jumps off the page to me, it's that one. But there's been some great ones out there. Worry Coulter might end up being a bit too inconsistent and that he won't necessarily grow out of it. Everyone's a critic, JB. Lundgaard's going to make a big impression next year, though. Suspect the big teams will be fighting over him by the end of the season. I don't know. He was great in qualifying at Indianapolis. I need to see more. But kid's got potential, certainly. That's never been the issue with Lundgaard. It's just about getting a series and a seat where he can actually drive to his full potential. But I want a substantial meal. Oh, Libby. You flatter me. I still owe you a pizza date, Libby. Jeez. I've got to sort that out at some point. But what's up with the negative Twitter perception of Audi rumours of acquiring McLaren? Because people like the current owners, Daniel. That's what it is. People like Zach Brown. People like... people like Zach Brown. People like what he's done with the team. McLaren are no longer the stuffy boys club that they used to be. With Ron Dennis being boring and corporate, they are fun. They're likable. You know, they give a lot back to their fans now. They're more colourful. They have two drivers that are popular. You know, and the team has bounced back from where they were 3 or 4 years ago. They're now, you know, top 3 contenders. Again, I mean, I know we evaluate McLaren in the context of major championships, but I think there's a lot to like about this current McLaren setup. And, like, Audi ownership, I think the idea of that, like, spoils a lot of the fun. I think that's why people were so pissy about it when the rumour first came up from Autocar magazine that Audi was going to buy them out. I think that's why people were so pissed off. I think a lot of people like the McLaren setup as it is. Best talent in the MotoGP setup at Ducati, Bagnaia. Bagnaia is brilliant, but honestly, there's rumours they're going to go after Quartararo next year. They don't need him. They have Jorge Martin. Like, it is a matter of time before the Ducati factory team is Francesco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin. And that is 2 unbelievably fast dudes right there. They don't need to spend $10 million a year on Fabio Quartararo to make their team better. They've got all the tools and the bike beneath them as resources in their setup right now. They do not need to do a thing, as far as I'm concerned. So, for me, leave it the hell alone. If Jack Miller is not a title contender next year, you bump Jorge Martin up and you go from there. That's how I think Ducati should play it, personally. Since we're at the end, no non-motorsport question. Gun to your head, who do you take as United manager? If Rangnick shows significant improvement, give him the job. If he wants it. If he wants it and the United are prepared to give it to him, let him keep it. If not, I still think Poch is the best manager potentially available. I'm not convinced that Zidane wants the job or wants to live in Manchester. Personally, I don't think you could get Zinedine Zidane. And the other big 2 managers, or the big 3 in the Premier League, are not going to move from their current clubs. Pep Guardiola is not going to go from one Manchester to the other. Jurgen Klopp is definitely not going to go from Liverpool to United if he decides to move on from them. And Thomas Tuchel just got in at Chelsea. So I think the 3 best managers in the world right now are currently unavailable. So I think if Rangnick is not the guy long term, I think you've got to give Poch a call. If not, Erik ten Hag at Ajax would be a great hire as well. I think Erik ten Hag is a fantastic manager, and he's doing seriously good work at Ajax. Seriously, a man is a world-class manager, and if you get bored, look up the Eredivisie league table and see how Ajax are doing. Just trust me on this. Ooh, here's a good one. Peep Show or IT Crowd? Never watched Peep Show, believe it or not. I just wasn't a big fan of Channel 4's comedy for the most part. I watched like the first 2 seasons of the IT Crowd, and IT Crowd wins by default. And a lot of people, for some reason, compared me to Richard Ayoade. I've never quite seen the comedic resemblance, but I liked the IT Crowd more, so I'll probably go with that. Are Ferrari favourite to the title next year? We don't know. Regulation changes are a bitch, to say the least. So, you know. It's, we don't know what's going to happen. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Pecco and Martin screams Rossi and Lorenzo. I don't think so. I think Bagnaia is quite a laid-back guy, actually. I don't think they'd be... I don't think that... Oh, by the way, 5 more minutes, because you guys are actually sending some good questions in. We'll go to quarter 2. Pecco and Martin screams Rossi. I don't think so, honestly. I think Pecco is quite a laid-back, quite chilled, quite mature young man, actually. I don't think there'll be this great big ego battle between them. Like, everything I've heard about those two seems like they're decent human beings. Like, Martin's a bit of a rapscallion. He's a bit of a maverick, apparently, in the paddock. But apparently he's alright deep down. So, I've got sources from people that have been in the paddock on this in MotoGP, whether it be as fans and as journalists. So just take my word for it on this one. I don't think there'd be this big ego bruising between Bagnaia and Martin. I think they'd race each other hard, certainly. But I don't think there'd be this battle of egos. Lewis Hamilton was a walking PR machine at McLaren. To go from that era to Lando, I understand why McLaren became liked so much. It's not... Lewis Hamilton was a walking PR machine at McLaren because he was black. He was black and he had a shit ton of ITV hype behind him. I don't think it was anything to do with McLaren, besides the fact that they were a top team at the time. Take it from me, as a guy who's grown up in West London for 20 plus years, Hamilton brought a lot of new fans back into F1 in 2007 because we got to see a black driver in a top tier seat. Me included. I sat there thinking, what was I going to do after Schumacher retired as a fan of Schumi? So naturally, I hopped on the wagon of supporting Lewis Hamilton because, I'm black, he's black, we got a black driver at the top. I think a lot of people did that. I know I was one of them. I don't think it was anything to do with McLaren being a PR machine. McLaren are boring, corporate, stuffy, and you could almost see the strings being pulled out of Hamilton's back when he was there with the team early days. Only Javi is savvy, I think a lot of the Hamilton hype machine was due to ITV giving a shit about Formula 2 for the first time, or GP2 as it was known back then in 2006, and the fact that to us urban folks, Hamilton was a big deal. I don't think that was down to McLaren outside of team status. It's not like he was driving for Minardi or driving for Toro Rosso. He was driving for a top-tier team. Naturally, people are going to be excited because back then it was McLaren versus Ferrari, and then it was everybody else. And it turns out Hamilton justified all the hype pretty much straight away, which the rest of the story writes itself. I'm just asking, if Rins underperforms again next year, who do you think Suzuki should get? Whoever the best free agent available is. We don't, like, this is going to be a crazy, silly season in MotoGP next year. Everybody besides Marc Marquez and everybody except Marc Marquez, Brad Binder, and all the rookies, so Gardner and Fernandez, Bezzecchi, and DG Antonio. All the rest of them are all in contract years. Apart from Maverick Vinales. There's going to be a lot of free agents in MotoGP next year. It's going to be a hectic, silly season. A big domino would have to fall for Suzuki to consider replacing Alex Rins. Look, Rins was bad last year, but he's done a lot more good than bad at Suzuki, and he warrants a second chance. Rins is, at his best, a top 3 rider in the world. He is really, really good. A great all-rounder as a bike racer. Rins is superb on his day. That deserves credit and a mention. He's allowed to have a bad season and see how we go. It depends. If Fabio Quartararo really is gonna and the other thing as well is that his teammate Johan Mir has openly teased testing free agency, and apparently Honda wants Mir alongside Marquez in 2023. So, Suzuki might be more inclined to keep Alex Rins, because there's a good chance they might lose Mir. Because Mir's going to put himself out there amongst all the other big free agents, and Ducati could come calling, Honda could come calling. You can only react to what else happens around you, is how I look at it. So it's hard for me to say who should Suzuki get, because we don't know who's out there. Daniel, is Oliveira tied down to KTM? Yes, but only for one more season. Oliveira is a free agent at the end of the year. End of next season, I should say. So, and Yamaha was already stiffing about Oliveira last year at one point, when they were thinking about guys they were going to replace Maverick with. Instead they took, apparently Oliveira knocked them back. He likes KTM, even though he wasn't very good last season. He was a very brief part where he was excellent, but outside of that, he wasn't great. Strange. Yeah, Katori said, how could any PR attention go to a corporate ball fest like McLaren in the 2000s any other way, with both Hamilton and Alonso having to conform to McLaren? Yeah, you think you're spot on, Katori. I think you're spot on. McLaren weren't, rolling out the red carpet for no one. They were just we've got the best driver lineup in F1, we reckon. Turns out they were right. But, the hype that came through McLaren was because of where their team was on a performance standpoint, and the fact Hamilton was seen as the next big British hope in Formula 1. Because by this point, Jenson Button had let Britain down. Last question. Tat's asking, how do you think Red Bull are doing in regards to power? Max still using his Russia engine. Less than Mercedes. They have a power disadvantage at this point. I don't think they were anywhere near as bad in Saudi Arabia as I thought they were going to be. The Honda has built a superb unit. A reliable one. I mean, Verstappen's only used 4 power units for the year, and he lost one of them after Silverstone's crash damage, I think. Or it was either Silverstone or the damage he took in Russia. Not Russia, sorry, in Hungary. One of them two was, I know Verstappen was down a power unit from his pool at some point or another. I think Verstappen would have made the whole season on 3 if it wasn't for the fact he lost one. Honda's built a reliable unit, certainly. Mercedes haven't, but the extra power might get them over the line in the end. We'll have to wait and see. But it's pretty clear that Mercedes has got more in the tank in terms of power, certainly. But you know, it's wild to say the least. Right, I think I'm going to call it a night. Just under 3 hours, and my throat is still a bit scratchy. My nose is still a bit blocked, so I'm still not quite 100% yet. But I do actually really enjoy this, and I hope you guys did too. It was a fun time, and there's still 25 of you in here, which is great. Again, I'll probably end up doing another one of these after the season finishes, most definitely. Look out. There'll be a lot of M101 content over the off-season. We've still got Saudi Arabia coming up. That'll be the next episode that's on the podcast network. We've got a special, almost 2-hour-long retrospective on Valentino Rossi coming out pretty soon as well, in his retirement. Check that out soon. We've also got our Formula 1 season review over Christmas. We've also got the Motorsport 101 Awards for 2021. They are back after a year on hiatus. They are back in 2021 as well, so that'll be one to look out for during the off-season. And there'll be plenty of content going into January, so check us out if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can find me on Twitter at Harrison101HD if you haven't already. You can follow me on there. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, as you guys always seem to do. I know I really enjoy talking to you guys for hours at a time. Really enjoyed it. I'm glad seeing the comments. I'm glad you guys did too. Tori, Marlene, Uzair, thank you. Libby, thank you, darling. Much appreciated. Daniel, cheers. Thanks for all the kind words, everybody. I do really appreciate it. I do really enjoy doing this. I always say I want to do them more often, and I will. I promise. Because you guys seem to really like them, and they do well views-wise. So that's certainly something I'm going to consider for 2022 as a goal. Certainly, I do really appreciate that. But thank you guys. Have a lovely evening. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the racing this weekend. Please try to enjoy it. I know it's not the best time to be a Formula 1 fan at the moment. It's chaos out there, but do try and enjoy what is the best title decider we've probably had in a good decade. So enjoy it. We'll catch you on the flip side, but until then, I'm Dre. Thanks as always. Take care. Sayonara.